passport to a new reality or a symbolic gesture? The Palestinian Authority adopts the State of Palestine as its new name. It'll be used on all public documents from passports to postage stamps, a move bound to anger Israel. Hello there, I'm Shuli Ghosh, you're with Inside Story. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has officially renamed the area he controls. Instead of Palestinian National Authority, all official documents, including passports, driving licenses, postage stamps and car number plates, will now bear the name State of Palestine. Abbas has also ordered foreign ministries and embassies around the world to start using the title. It follows the UN General Assembly's recognition of Palestine as a state. Abbas said this latest presidential decree was aimed at enhancing sovereignty on the ground and was a step towards real independence. Well, there's been no official word from Israel on the Palestinian move. Jane Ferguson is in Jerusalem.
Sunday's announcement by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas left a lot of questions as to how these changes would be implementable. Essentially, what he has asked is that the government prepare themselves to issue State of Palestine on letterheads, official documents, even passports and IDs and stamps for postage. But whether or not those will actually ever be really implemented is unsure because of the restrictions and the political situation right now. What it really is a political move to maintain momentum after the UN vote to grant Palestine non-member observer status in November. Mahmoud Abbas and others like him want to keep the debate in the international arena. So whilst this move is unlikely to change anything for the Palestinians, it does keep this debate going. The Israelis have not yet responded with any statements, but are likely to be very unhappy about this and see it as a provocative move. So in the coming days, we're likely to see both sides issuing additional statements.
Well, let's bring in our guests today. Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat is in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Joining us from Jerusalem, Robbie Sable, former legal advisor to Israel's foreign ministry. And completing the lineup, Rosemary Hollis, Professor of Middle East Policy Studies at City University in London. Good to have all of you with us. Saeb, let's start with you. Tell us about this move. I mean, is this basically a strategic shift towards the establishment of an independent state?
Yes, I think it is. I think the reality after the 29th of November 2012, when the majority of the nations on earth decided to grant Palestine a status, a legal and geographic entity status as a state, an observer state. We, Palestine now in the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, 67 lines, had become a country under occupation. We're a nation state under occupation. It's true that Israel controls our passages, our skies, our waters, our lives, our homes. It's true that I cannot leave from here to Amman without a permission from the Israeli occupiers. But at the same time, those civilized nations who are members of the UN must adhere to all General Assembly and Security Council resolutions that are passed.
Okay, but you've just said as far as the reality on the ground goes that you cannot move freely and that Israel still controls the border and still controls the territory. So what does changing the letterhead on your documents, what does that do?
Well, it's not only the letterhead in my documents and it's not only the placards of my offices and so on. This is the manifestation of the State of Palestine. Now we are studying all options available to us. Of course, we want to give the peace process the chance it deserves, and we offer the Israelis and the Americans and to inform the Europeans that we intend to give peace a chance if the Israelis accept to stop settlements and to release prisoners and to resume negotiations where we lived them in 2008. We're willing to give peace a chance in order to realize the two-state solution for the State of Palestine to live side by side in peace and security with the State of Israel. Now, if Israel chooses, as usual, to say no sacred dates and we're going to continue with settlements and these are conditions and blah, 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 we are studying now with our legal teams the instrument of accessions to 62 organizations, UN specialized agencies, conventions, treaties, and agreements. Palestine is a country under occupation. What was Norway, what was Norway, Finland, Holland, France, Korea, Philippines between 1939 and 1945. Nation states under occupation. Today, the state of Palestine is officially a state under occupation. It has 192 member countries that recognize this, and a nation state, Israel, which is the occupying power.
Let me bring
These are the new realities.
Let me bring in Robbie here. Robbie, we haven't had any official word from the Israeli government, but I mean, they've been downplaying the UN General Assembly vote, but they're not going to be happy about this move from the Palestinians, are they?
I think Israel won't be happy about it, because anything that undermines a peace process, any unilateral act, is not helpful. We have very serious and difficult issues that we face and that the Palestinians have to face, and that will have to be settled by negotiations.
But the Palestinians would say, sorry to interrupt you, Robbie, but the Palestinians would say that the Israelis undermine the peace process by carrying on with settlement building, for example.
Well, Israel has made it quite clear that one of the issues that we can negotiate will be the settlements. By the way, Jerusalem is also one of the issues that will be negotiated. What Israel doesn't agree to is preconditions. In other words, saying, what I'm hearing from the Palestinians is that we'll only negotiate if, in advance, prior to negotiations, you agree to something, to do something. And the answer is, these are issues that are on the table. It would be perfectly legitimate for the Palestinians to raise the issue of settlements, to raise the issue of Jerusalem. Israel will also be raising issues, but they can only be solved on the table.
So does this move by the Palestinians, does this bring talks closer, the possibility of peace negotiation closer, or does it push them further away?
I think it's harmful. Unilateral acts by their nature means this issue, one side or the other side is going to try and decide by itself, or perhaps try and get the UN to decide, which is the Palestinians tried to. Neither the UN nor unilateral acts can solve the issues. The issues must be solved by direct negotiations. It's difficult. It'll mean making compromises on both sides, but there is no other way. And anything that is harmful to this, I think, is harmful to the peace process.
Rosemary, what do you think? Let's start with what the Palestinians have done by renaming everything State of Palestine. First of all, could that work? Can you change reality on the ground by a move as simple as issuing passports in that name?
I think the Israeli-Palestinian conflict demonstrates very strongly for us how it's not only about what we used to call facts on the ground, which is bricks and tarmac and concrete, roads and settlements and walls and so on. The whole conflict is also about identity, national heritage. And in that aspect of the struggle, of the conflict, it's extremely important what words are used to describe the Palestinian entity. To call it a state is to give it greater stature. And I think this is an ongoing part of the struggle. You have another echo of that where you have in Israel, within the 67 borders, you have the Israelis renaming and rewriting in Hebrew script the names of what used to be Palestinian villages and districts. And you have in the West Bank, in the Palestinian towns, the Palestinians renaming streets after their national heroes. This is a battle of the narratives and of identity.
Well, what about the Israeli position?
Very significant.
What about the Israeli position that the whole Palestinian bid at the UN and now reissuing passports, etc. The Israeli position is that violates agreements to achieve statehood through bilateral negotiation.
It depends which agreements you want to cite, but I think the changing regional, historical and political context is extremely important to hold both parties to things that they signed up to under different leaderships in the 1990s is one thing, and to hold them to representation of their national struggle, which for the Palestinians since Oslo has always been about statehood. They were never happy with the idea that they might get something else as a result of a negotiating process. And the Israelis, by their actions since the Oslo process died, have been about making sure that they don't have to concede as much as was originally envisaged when Oslo started.
Okay.
This is an ongoing struggle.
Well, Saeb, let me just ask you, Robbie in Jerusalem has said that the Palestinian action is undermining any chance of peace negotiation because you're acting unilaterally. What do you say to that?
Well, I really don't. To the gentleman who's speaking from Israel, I really don't. The Israeli gentleman, I don't know what we have been doing in the negotiating table for 20 years. I mean, ignoring fact doesn't mean doesn't exist. Today, as I speak to you, sir, in 2013, there are roads in the West Bank I cannot use as a Palestinian. Never in the darkest hours of South Africa's apartheid were blacks prevented to use roads white were using. It's an apartheid system out there. What do you call your settlement activities? Dictation, walls, lack of movements, incursions, arrests,
He's got a good point, Robbie. He's saying that years of negotiations have led nowhere. So why shouldn't they take this action? Why shouldn't they move unilaterally?
I hope that I can finish one sentence, surely. Just
Go ahead,
one sentence.
Saeb.
I know we're Palestinians, we're used to this, but I need to finish one sentence. To say that we went to the UN to say we want the state of Palestine on 1967 lines to live side by side the state of Israel. This is a crime in Israel Dictionary 2013. This is a crime that I should be punished, and it's called unilateral. And then is stopping settlement activities an obligation on Israel or a condition by the Palestinians? Read Article 31 to the final agreements of the Oslo Accords. It is, you're not supposed to do a single activity in the West Bank. And from now on, after Palestine was granted this status, you know, your settlement activities, moving your people to the occupied territories, is a war crime. And if you worry about criminal courts, you should stop your crimes.
Okay,
today, your settlers are burning mosques, churches, killing innocent people,
Robbie,
uprooting trees.
Quick response to that from you, Robbie.
Yes, firstly, I'm disappointed to hear accusations. Obviously, there have been terrorist acts. I'm not raising it now. What we need to do is to solve the issues, not recrimination. By the way, Saeb is, of course, aware that there is nothing in Oslo saying that settlements are illegal or they should be removed. However, the settlement issue is something we can negotiate. Israel has openly said we will negotiate the settlement issue. And the key, of course, is borders. Once we agree on a border, there will be no Israeli settlements on the Palestinian side, and of course, no future settlements. But the issue is, where will be the border? This has to be decided by negotiations. And I wish the Palestinians wouldn't believe that somebody else is going to negotiate for them, that somehow the UN will deliver it, or by accusing us of crimes, this will solve the problem. It won't. They have to sit with us without preconditions, and they will find that we can settle and we can negotiate the issues. They're difficult. They go to the heart of the conflict between two peoples, Israel and Palestine. Israel accepts the fact that Palestinians are entitled to a state. In fact, many Israelis welcome the fact if we can have a prosperous Palestinian state as our neighbour, it's in our interest. But the borders, the issues between the two entities have to be negotiated.
Okay, let's just move the conversation in a slightly different direction. I want to take a look at some of the important developments for Palestinians in recent months. So in November, after a week-long conflict in Gaza, Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire. Later that month, despite Israeli and US opposition, as we've said, the Palestinian Authority was upgraded to a non-member observer state by the UN General Assembly. Now, encouraged by that success, Fatah allowed Hamas to hold anniversary rallies in the West Bank, and 2 weeks later, Israel eased the blockade it imposed on Gaza when Hamas took control in 2007. And then on Friday, Hamas allowed a large Fatah rally in Gaza, signalling a possible end to the 5-year rift between the two sides. Rosemary, one of the side effects from the Palestinian action in the UN seems to be a growing closeness between Fatah and Hamas. There seems to be more chance of reconciliation now than there has been since 2007. Is that how you see it?
It is, and I think one of the reasons for that is this example of what happened to end the most recent round of the Israel-Gaza conflict, namely that the Israelis effectively, whether through the Egyptians or not, negotiated with Hamas. And at the same time, they have not negotiated with Abbas and not gone to the Palestinian leadership that has actually renounced violence. So this sends, from the Palestinian point of view, a message that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, or you may as well use a combination of violence and negotiation, because that's what the reality has become. And on the Israeli side, I think it demonstrates that they are more conflicted themselves about the future of the West Bank than they are about Gaza. They certainly don't want Gaza. They would love a Palestinian state in Gaza. As to the future of the Palestinians in the West Bank and what kind of identity they will have, you have huge disagreements amongst Israelis themselves. So they don't have a single negotiating position on the West Bank.
Saeb, sorry, I interrupted you when you were trying to say something there about the chance of reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. I know that the two sides signed a reconciliation deal in 2011, but nothing's happened since then. Is this something that's on the cards in the near future?
Well, I believe that Hamas is a Palestinian political party, Fatah is a Palestinian political party. When we differ, we should resort to ballot boxes and not bullet boxes. So the way to reconciliation is to hold presidential legislative elections. This is what we agreed upon. This is what we signed in Cairo and Doha. And I hope Hamas will allow the Central Election Commission to upgrade the voters registration so we can go back to the people and let them choose. There is no other path to reconciliation other than conducting presidential legislative elections. We cannot cancel anyone. We have 26 political parties. We're a pluralistic society. We're a democratic society. And once again, if we differ with something, and I'm not asking Hamas to see with my eyes or hear with my ears, speak with my tongue. When we differ, we go to ballots and not bullets.
But do you think the Palestinian people would be in a stronger position if Hamas and Fatah were unified? And if they are in a stronger position for what? To take on Israel?
It's not unification of Fatah and Hamas. Hamas will be Hamas, Fatah will be Fatah. But the thing is to agree to allow Palestinian people to choose who will represent them in their parliament, who will be their president, by the free democratic choice of elections. And we need reconciliation because the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem are a single territorial unit, and we need to ensure that we have one authority, one gun, and the rule of law in order to realize the two-state solution. And as far as the point about that I countered accusations, describing facts doesn't mean it's accusations. There were 200,000 settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem in 1993 when we began negotiations. Today, as I speak to you, surely, there are 600,000 settlers. And that's undermining the two-state solution. That's killing the two-state solution. And Israel is committed to stop settlement activities. And this is not an obligation. So the choice is Israel. Choose between dictation and negotiations. Choose between settlements or peace. You can't have both. And I hope and pray that Israel will choose negotiations and peace Robbie, and not settlements and dictations.
Let's ask Robbie what he thinks Israel is going to choose, because Israel's reaction so far is to immediately announce after the UN vote that it was going to build thousands more homes in settler territory. It's also withheld taxes, hasn't it, from the Palestinian Authority. So what is its reaction likely to be now?
Frankly, Israel faces the dilemma. If we do nothing, just a moment, then I'll let you reply. Israel has a dilemma. If we do nothing and acquiesce, we are acquiescing in a violation of the agreement. In other words, the agreement is neither side takes any unilateral step. On the other hand, we have no interest whatsoever in weakening the Palestinian Authority or Fatah. It's not in our interest. Therefore, what Israel tried to choose, I don't know whether they succeeded in doing it, is making it clear that unilateral action from one side will lead to Israeli reaction. However, Israel tried to temper it so as not to undermine Palestinian Authority. Whether Israel succeeded or not, I don't know. But this is a problem. If Palestinians take unilateral steps, they must assume Israel will react. Again, Israel tried not to overreact. I don't know whether Israel succeeded, but simply to point out, send the message, gentlemen, if you take unilateral actions, there will be an Israeli response to it. And this was we tried to find a modum vivendi. I don't know whether Israel succeeded in doing this. I hope
Rosemary, let me get the wider picture from you. I know that the US, of course, wasn't very happy with the Palestinian move at the General Assembly. One assumes they're not going to be happy with the Palestinian move to rebrand all their documents. What do you think the wider international reaction is going to be to this?
Well, you saw how they stood at the UN General Assembly, and one of the reasons why a few people abstained, a few countries abstained, including the British, rather than voting in support of the Palestinians, they didn't want to vote against the move at the General Assembly. They abstained because they had this theory at the time that the new Obama administration might be persuaded to give the revival of the so-called peace process just one more chance, and that they didn't want to jump ahead of that possibility by any move at the UN. But it's already conceivable that that was a pretty vain hope in the first place. And it is curious, it's extremely curious on the outside to hear all this talk about the peace process and unilateral moves jeopardizing the peace process. There isn't one. So all I can see is a continuation of the struggle by a series of different means.
OK, let's just have a look at some tweets that we've received on this subject. Wire Davis says, "What's in a name? Over the weekend, Mahmoud Abbas signed a decree formally changing the Palestinian Authority to State of Palestine." Sazzle says, "Can't wait to have a visa stamp in my passport from the State of Palestine and be free to enter and leave like any other country." I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the case. But Andrew Strurline says, "Expect more disappointment and more pressure on leadership as they are ridiculed for changing letterhead." Saeb Erekat, what next for the Palestinians, Saeb? Where are you going from here? What's the next move?
The decrees that the President Abbas issued this weekend is about the names and title of the real name. Now, the name of Palestine is the State of Palestine. That's how it's going to appear in the UN. That's going to appear in 138 nations that already granted us recognition. And we have full embassies there. As far as the passport is concerned, the decree is for a commission of the Interior Ministry to study the matter for the next 2 months, because we don't want to have a confrontation with the Israelis. We're under their occupation. We don't want to overload the wagon of complexities. And as I told you, we're going to give a chance to try to see if we can revive the peace process if the Israeli government accept to stop settlements as an obligation, not as a Palestinian condition. Now, the fact of the matter, Israel is a member of the UN. Today, a UN General Assembly resolution was passed for the State of Palestine to live side by side the State of Israel. I hope that Israel will not violate the Charter of the UN by rejecting such resolution. And when you say that you want to not to weaken me as a Palestinian, today is the second month in a row I cannot pay the police or the teachers or the doctors or the nurses or the farmers. How can you feel as a father or a mother in Israel if you cannot pay your children to go to school?
Because there is a huge financial crisis.
This is our money, surely. Our money. This is our money. The Israelis, because we don't have harbors, we don't have airports, they collect our customs for us in exchange for 3%.
Just before we come to the end of it, let me ask Robbie to answer that, because that is an important point. The big financial crisis because the Palestinian Authority are unable to pay their workers. Why? I mean, what does Israel gain from weakening the Palestinian Authority like that by withholding tax revenues? Why would Israel take that strategy?
Israel gains nothing. We did not wish to do this, but unilateral steps there will be reaction. They've got to take this into account. It's not a costless thing. I welcome, however, Saeb's reaction that they want to renew negotiations. Please, however, do this without preconditions. Don't demand that Israel does something in order to negotiate. However, go to the negotiating table and there make your demands, which are perfectly legitimate. Israel will have demands, but don't make a condition for negotiations. However, make negotiations and there you raise demands. Okay. And that is the answer to it.
I'm sure everybody here would like to see more negotiations in the future. It's been a really interesting debate. Thank you very much indeed to all my guests, Saeb Erekat, Robbie Sable and Rosemary Hollis. And that's it for this edition of Inside Story. Now, don't forget, you can get in touch with me directly via Twitter. I'm HackHound. Or you can email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Let me just read you one last tweet that I got directly. I think it's one of those things which is symbolic at first, but will become significant with time, or so I hope. That's from Quack Zar. I'm Shuni Ghosh. Until next time, bye for now.